This guy's video starts as a Zack Snyder defense. Then it becomes a masculinity argument. Then it tells you to get lean. Superman is in there somewhere, trust me. And look, I don't think the guy making it is completely wrong about everything. Some of it genuinely lands, but the core argument, it misunderstands Superman at a pretty fundamental level. And once you see the sleight of hand happening underneath it, the whole thing unravels pretty fast. So let's go through it claim by claim.
The new Superman movie changed what Superman is, and it's a perfect reflection of what's wrong with modern culture. Henry Cavill's Superman was a god choosing to walk as a man. From the House of El, Kryptonian royalty.
Hang on a second. So, right away there's a factual problem here. The House of El in Man of Steel weren't gods or royalty, they were scientists. Jor-El was a scholar who put his son in a rocket because he loved him. That's the origin. And that son grew up in Smallville, Kansas, felt like an outsider his whole childhood, watched his dad die on the side of a road and couldn't stop it, not because he lacked the power, but because his father asked him not to. That's not transcendence. That's a deeply human story about loss and restraint. Let's keep going.
Noble even amongst gods. He was innately virtuous, innately powerful. He didn't have flaws to overcome. He was transcendent. That's the point. He was something to aspire to, something greater with no mortal limitations.
Here's the thing. A being with no limitations and no struggle isn't aspirational. It's just a screensaver. What makes Superman worth looking up to isn't his power, it's his choice. Every single day, with the ability to take something, anything he wants, he chooses humility. He chooses Kansas over Krypton. He chooses Clark over Kal-El. That choice, made by someone who absolutely doesn't have to, is what sets the standard. Let's keep going.
The new Superman is just a guy with superpowers. He stumbles, he struggles, he's got the same problems you do. That's the shift from aspiration to validation. Cavill's...
Hang on a second. This is where the argument sounds smart, but actually falls apart. Because Gunn's Superman isn't aspirational despite his struggles, he's aspirational because of them. He faces doubt, fear, pain, and still does the right thing. Every time, without ego, without cruelty. That's not validation, that's the highest possible standard. It's easy to be good when you're an untouchable god. It's hard when you're vulnerable. That's the point. And by the way, Snyder's Superman had plenty of struggles too. He spent most of Man of Steel tortured and conflicted about whether humanity even deserved being saved. So the idea that Cavill's version was this flawless, transcendent being just doesn't hold up when you actually watch the film. Let's keep going.
Superman embodied the idea that absolute power doesn't have to be absolutely corrupt. That's why he gave people hope. But modern culture can't handle that. We think power is inherently corrupting. A strong masculine figure is a patriarchal dictator. Greatness is privilege. So we changed Superman.
No, we didn't change Superman. So right here, we've moved from being a film criticism to talking about masculinity, privilege, cultural decay. Keep that in mind. We'll come back to it.
Stripped his Kryptonian nobility. We gave him human emotional flaws. Because validation is easier than aspiration. And you see this everywhere. Body positivity says healthy at all sizes. Translation, don't strive for anything greater. But you don't...
What? And there it is. We went from talking about Superman to body positivity in the same breath. That's not a film argument anymore. That's a cultural war argument using Superman as the entry point. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. So this guy's true message is starting to come through. This is not a Superman criticism. Let's keep going.
You become great by validating your limitations. You become great by rising above them. Zack Snyder understood this. His Superman was something to aspire towards, not something to relate to. Stop seeking validation, start seeking transformation. Get lean, get strong, strive to transcend the limitations of your mortal body and mind.
Okay, so that's the destination. Get in the gym. Superman was the on-ramp. Look, the call to self-improvement isn't wrong, but notice what this argument defines as weak along the way. Emotional vulnerability, kindness, caring about people, struggling. These aren't treated as human qualities worth honouring. They're framed as failures of character, cultural rot. And that's a problem, because those qualities, that is Superman. It's always been Superman. So, look, when someone uses Superman to tell you that vulnerability is decay and emotion is flaw, ask yourself what they're actually selling, because it's not a film take and it's probably not for you. Because here's what Superman actually is and has always been. He's a being who could have been anything, who could rule, dominate, take, and he chooses every single day to be kind, to be gentle, to show up for the small stuff as much as the world-ending stuff. He stops the asteroid and he helps the kid who's lost. He defeats the supervillain and he takes time to make someone feel seen, not because he has to, but because he wants to. That's not a God looking down at humanity. That's someone who loves humanity deeply, unconditionally, and believes without any cynicism that people are worth saving. That's why he's lasted nearly 90 years, not because he's powerful, but because he's good, in the simplest, purest, most unfashionable sense of that word. And ironically, the take that we just broke down, the one that says emotion is weakness, that vulnerability is cultural rot, that the real lesson here is to get lean and transcend your limitations, that take has more in common with Lex Luthor than Superman. The idea that power is what matters, that softness is failure, that greatness means rising above people rather than standing with them. Superman was never that guy. He was never the one who stood above us. He was always the guy who stood beside us. And if you don't get that, then I'm sorry, you just don't get Superman. I'm Steve Eunice from supermanhomepage.com.
Subscribe to our free Superman homepage newsletter and stay in the loop. Go to supermanhomepage.com/newsletter. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the bell to ensure you don't miss out on any of our new videos.